The announcement echoed through the crowded station, a metallic voice bouncing off steel beams and glass panels. People surged forward in waves, dragging luggage, holding children, chasing departures they couldn't afford to miss. But she stood still, rooted, unmoving, as if the floor itself had claimed her. Her fingers clutched a small suitcase, the handle worn smooth from years of holding on. It wasn't heavy, not really. Yet it weighed on her like memory does, like silence does when it grows too sharp to carry. A red scarf dangled from its zipper, fluttering each time the doors slid open and the wind rushed in. The scarf wasn't hers. It had belonged to someone else. Someone she had promised herself never to forget. She adjusted it absent-mindedly, the fabric brushing her wrist, and her chest tightened. Around her the world blurred into movement. Faces passing, voices colliding. But her gaze fixed on a single figure across the platform. He wasn't watching her. Not yet. He leaned casually against a column, one hand in his coat pocket, the other tapping a cracked watch as if time belonged to him alone. His stance was careless, but his presence was sharp enough to slice through the noise. She knew him. Too well. The way you know a shadow that refuses to leave your wall at night. Her lips parted but no words formed. The scarf trembled in her grasp. A memory flickered. His foot, planted firmly in her doorway, blocking the frame, blocking her air. That single act, as small as it looked, had shifted the ground beneath her. It had said, "You don't get to close me out." It had burned into her chest, a slow fire that had taken months to smother. Now, in this station filled with strangers, his silhouette reappeared, as though summoned by the very silence she tried to keep. Her hand shook against the suitcase handle. She inhaled, but the air refused to reach deep enough. Why here? She thought. Why now? A train thundered past, wind lifting strands of her hair, pulling them across her face. She brushed them aside with a trembling hand, and when her eyes cleared, his gaze had finally found hers. The cracked watch on his wrist glinted under the harsh station lights, and something in his stare told her he remembered everything too. She pressed her lips together, the red scarf coiling tighter around her wrist like it sensed the storm. Her suitcase felt impossibly small against the weight of the moment. And as the next announcement blared, drowning the space between them, she understood one thing with startling clarity. This was not over. Not yet. The scarf slipped from her wrist as the train roared past, snapping in the air before settling again like a restless bird. She caught it quickly, pressing the fabric to her chest, her fingers twisting it tight. The red always reminded her of her father's voice, the way he used to say, "Don't let them take what you've built, not even an inch." He never left her with money, only words and this scarf, tied around her bag the day he walked out and never came back. She glanced at the suitcase. The corners were scuffed, the zipper teeth uneven. She had carried it through rented rooms with peeling walls, staircases that smelled of damp wood, and nights where hunger left her lightheaded. The bag was old, yes, but it was hers. And maybe that was why she never replaced it, because it held proof that she had survived. Around her the station shifted with small aching scenes. A child ran into her mother's arms, the mother's laughter echoing with relief. Two teenagers pressed their foreheads together before parting ways. An old man leaned on his cane, waiting for someone who might not come. She watched it all quietly, her chest folding in on itself. People left and returned. People had anchors. And yet she was a body always in transit. Still she stood. Because running had never been her only language. She felt his gaze again. Sharp. Patient. Across the platform he hadn't moved. He didn't need to. The crowd streamed between them, but his eyes found her through every break in the tide. His silence wasn't the silence of distance. It was the silence of someone who wanted her to notice. Her jaw tightened. A flashback burned through her. A narrow doorway, his hand pressing against the frame, his shoe wedging the door open. His voice low, almost amused. "You can't shut me out like that." She remembered the helpless fury bubbling in her chest, her palms sweaty against the wood, her breath quick and shallow. That single moment had taught her how fragile locks could be, how false the idea of safety was. The scarf slipped again, brushing her skin as if to remind her. Doors could be slammed, but they could also be bought, claimed, made entirely hers. She bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted iron. She hadn't told anyone how hard she had worked. Late nights with sore hands, meals skipped, debts negotiated with sharp breaths and sharper smiles. All to prove something. All to build walls that no one could kick their way into. The announcement blared another delay. She exhaled shakily, shifting her grip on the suitcase. Across the platform he tilted his head, just slightly, as if amused at her stillness. And then he did it. The smallest curve of his lips, not quite a smile, not quite mockery, froze her. Her foot lifted toward the exit, but instead of stepping forward, she hesitated, the scarf tightening once more in her grasp. The goodbye she thought she had already spoken lingered, unfinished. The platform lights flickered as the clouds outside thickened, swallowing what little sunlight remained. The air shifted, the kind of weight before rain when thunder waits just behind the sky. She tightened her grip on the suitcase, but her feet refused to move. Across the tracks he finally stepped forward. The crowd adjusted around him, parting in strange unison, though no one seemed to notice. His stride wasn't hurried. Each step felt measured, deliberate, as though he wanted her to feel every second of the distance collapsing. Her eyes dropped, searching for details that betrayed him. His shoes, once polished, were worn at the edges, the leather cracked from years of use. A thread pulled loose at the cuff of his sleeve. As he adjusted his coat, a wallet slipped slightly from the pocket. For a moment, she glimpsed a torn photograph tucked inside. Two faces blurred, one of them younger, smiling, untouched by the sharpness she now saw in him. Something pressed painfully against her chest. He had a past too. Not just the version of him that wedged his foot into her door. Not just the shadow she carried in memory. He was broken somewhere too. And that unsettled her more than hate ever could. The first drops of rain tapped against the high windows, the station humming with the sound of water finding its way in. She shifted her suitcase closer, the scarf dampening as it brushed the ground. Her breath fogged in the sudden chill, and for a heartbeat, she wasn't sure if she wanted to run or to wait. Her father's words echoed again. Don't let them take what's yours. But what if what was hers was also what mirrored him? What if they were not two enemies but two ruins, reflecting each other in fractured glass? She lifted her gaze and found him staring, not with the arrogance she expected, but with something unreadable. Quiet plea perhaps, or a challenge. His silence stretched between them, heavy as the thunder outside. Her heart knocked against her ribs. She thought of nights spent alone in cheap apartments, the way loneliness folded her into herself. Was that same loneliness in his cracked shoes, his forgotten photograph? Or was this all another trick? His way of pulling her back into the same doorway, leaving her breathless and powerless again? The rain fell harder, drumming against steel beams, drowning the station in a rhythm that matched the storm in her chest. The announcement came, her train was boarding. She clutched her suitcase, her pulse sharp in her ears. But she didn't move. Not yet. The scarf clung wetly to her wrist as she lifted her eyes one last time. His lips parted, as if he was about to speak. And she froze, suspended between leaving and listening, between escape and return. The moment held unanswered. The platform shivered under the weight of the storm outside, each raindrop echoing against the roof like 1,000 unspoken questions. Her train hissed, doors sliding open with a metallic sigh, inviting her to leave, to disappear into somewhere else. She took a step, one then another. The scarf dragged damp against the floor, heavy with water, clinging to her wrist like it didn't want her to go. She swallowed hard, forcing herself forward. And then she stopped, not because of the train, not because of the voice urging passengers to board, but because something inside her cracked, sharp and sudden like glass under pressure. She couldn't stop herself from turning back, just for one last look. He was still there, still watching. Her knees trembled. She gripped the suitcase harder, her breath shallow. A woman passing by glanced at her, frowned slightly, as though wondering why someone would just stand there, caught between leaving and staying. Another man muttered under his breath, blocking the way, brushing past with irritation. The judgments pricked her skin like needles, but she stayed rooted. His hand moved then, slowly, carefully. When he pulled it from his coat pocket, she saw it, her scarf. Not the one tied to her suitcase, but another, older one, frayed at the edges, faded but unmistakably hers. The twin to what she carried, lost years ago in a rush of arguments and slammed doors. Her breath caught. He didn't raise it high. He didn't wave it like a flag. He simply held it in his hand, loose and quiet, as if to say, I never threw it away. Her chest burned. The scarf wasn't just fabric. It was history, proof that some pieces of her had been stolen, kept, carried without permission. And yet here it was, returned by the same hands that once forced a door open. The thunder outside cracked like a warning. She flinched, her grip slipping on the suitcase handle. Her thoughts spiraled. Some people carry more than just bags, they carry silence. They carry what doesn't belong to them. His eyes locked with hers, heavy, unreadable. He didn't smile this time. He only held the scarf out, as if waiting for her to decide what it meant. The crowd pressed around her, brushing, muttering, tugging her toward the train. Yet every step forward pulled her deeper into the weight of his silence, his offering, his defiance. Her throat tightened, words trembling against her lips, but none escaped. She wasn't sure if she wanted to scream, or to reach for what he held. The scarf dripped rainwater between his fingers, the fabric sagging like it carried all the years between them. And she stood frozen, heart unraveling, suspended in the storm of a choice she could not yet make. The scarf slipped from his hand as the storm rattled the station glass, falling wet against the floor between them. She couldn't move, not yet. But the train hissed again, the doors threatening to close, the world forcing her to choose. Then she saw it, tucked under his arm as he bent to pick up the scarf. A folder. Plain gray, damp at the corners from rain, but the logo stamped across it made her breath vanish. The same company letterhead she had folded into her own bag just that morning. The application she had sent weeks ago. The last hope after years of scraping by. Her pulse raced. No, it couldn't be coincidence. He straightened, scarf in one hand, folder in the other, and this time when his gaze found hers, she understood the silence was not just memory, it was power. He wasn't only the man who once forced her door open. He was the one who could now decide whether she stepped into her future, or stayed pressed against the walls of survival. A dizzy heat spread through her chest. She remembered her father's words, clear as thunder. Don't let them take what you've built, not even an inch. And yet here he was, standing with inches that belonged to her, the job, the chance, the scarf, the history. Her throat burned. Then another truth surfaced, more brutal than the first. When he held the scarf out again, his voice finally broke the silence. Low, strained. It wasn't yours I kept, he said. It was hers. She blinked, confused, until he opened the folder slightly. Inside, tucked flat against papers, was a photograph. A little girl with the same scarf looped clumsily around her neck. Smiling. Fragile. Gone. If the hollow in his voice meant what she feared. Her heart faltered. The red scarf she thought was hers, her inheritance of memory, was something else too. His loss, his tether. The storm roared harder, the lights flickered. And suddenly the scarf didn't just weigh with her past. It carried his ghost as well. She staggered back a step, but her body refused to leave. The train doors shut with a hiss, sealing her choice before she even made it. Some people carry more than just bags, they carry silence. She realized then this was no longer about escape. This was about standing inside the fire without flinching. Her grip tightened on the suitcase, soaked leather pressing into her palm. And when he turned, not toward her but toward the exit, she followed. Not because she trusted him, not because she forgave him, but because she knew with aching clarity that this path would not let her go. She walked into the stormlit corridor, a room of decisions waiting beyond the glass doors. No return. The corridor hummed with the storm outside, rain streaking down the glass in fractured rivers. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, throwing pale shadows that followed them as they walked. She clutched her suitcase so tightly her knuckles whitened, the red scarf trailing behind like a wounded flag. He stopped near the end of the hall, the doors leading out into the city shuddering with the wind. For a long time neither spoke. The silence pressed against her ears until it almost split her open. Finally, he placed the folder on a bench, setting the scarf atop it. The gesture was simple, but it felt like a verdict. "You remind me of her," he said, voice flat, eyes cast somewhere past her shoulder. "The way you hold on, even when everything tells you to let go. My daughter was the same. She wore that scarf until the day she—" He broke off, his jaw tightening, words dissolving into the storm's thunder. Her chest caved inward. So it was true. The scarf she had carried like a lifeline was not only hers. It was also an echo of someone else's unfinished story. She bent down, fingertips brushing the wet fabric. The scarf clung to her skin, heavier than it had ever been. She wanted to claim it, to keep it, to insist it belonged to her because of everything she had endured. But looking at his hands, hands that once forced a door open, now trembling ever so slightly, she understood. Some things weren't meant to be owned. They were meant to be released. Her father's words returned like a strike of lightning. "Don't let them take what you've built. Not even an inch." She thought she had been building walls. But maybe walls weren't the answer. Maybe letting go was. Slowly, she folded the scarf and placed it back on the folder. "It's not mine," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. "It never was." His eyes finally met hers, and for the first time they softened. Not with apology, not with love, but with recognition, the quiet acknowledgement of two survivors staring into the same mirror. The storm surged louder, rattling the glass doors until they flew open. Wind howled into the corridor, cold and insistent. She didn't flinch. Instead, she set her suitcase down, releasing the handle she had clung to for so long. "I don't need this anymore," she said, almost to herself. The bag, the scarf, the memories, they had been proof of her survival. But now, survival no longer defined her. He picked up the folder, tucking the scarf inside with deliberate care. Without another word, he walked past her, the rain swallowing his figure until he disappeared into the night. She remained in the doorway, hair whipping against her face, the storm washing her clean in its ruthless way. For the first time her hands were empty, and yet she felt lighter. The station behind her hummed. The city beyond beckoned. She stepped forward, not chasing him, not fleeing either. Simply walking into the unknown with a heart both broken and reborn. Not every stranger you help is meant to stay. But some leave you changed forever. The storm passed by morning. Puddles clung to the streets, reflecting a broken sky stitched slowly with light. She walked alone down a narrow lane, her shoes damp, her hair still smelling faintly of rain. The city moved as it always did. Vendors lifting shutters, buses groaning awake, but something in her had shifted. Her suitcase was lighter now. Not because its weight had changed, but because her grip on it had. She no longer clutched it as proof of survival. She simply carried it because it was hers, and that was enough. She paused outside a small cafe, its windows fogged with early steam. Inside, people gathered, sharing bread, pouring coffee, pressing laughter against the cold glass. She watched quietly, not with envy, but with a strange tenderness. Life was continuing with or without her, and she realized she wasn't chasing belonging anymore. She was building it one step at a time. Later, in the rented room she called her own, she opened the drawer of the small wooden desk by the window. The morning sun spilled through thin curtains, softening the edges of everything it touched. From her suitcase, she pulled out a folded paper, the job application she had carried like a lifeline. She laid it flat inside the drawer, placing a stone on top so it wouldn't curl. The scarf she left behind. Not on accident. Not in anger. But as a choice. Some objects belong to memory, not possession. Her reflection in the window startled her. For a moment she thought she saw her father's gaze looking back, the same quiet insistence to keep walking. She pressed her hand to the glass, steady this time, no tremor in her fingers. Sometimes love is not romance. It's recognition. The line slipped through her mind, uninvited yet true. Recognition of pain, of loss, of resilience. Recognition that even enemies could mirror what was most fragile in you. A knock echoed faintly from somewhere down the hall. Someone else arriving, someone else leaving. She didn't rise to open her door. Not yet. Instead, she sat by the window watching sunlight gather on the streets, letting her breath fall into rhythm with the city. The suitcase rested quietly by her feet, no longer a cage of memories but just a bag. She thought of him, walking into the storm with the scarf tucked under his arm. She didn't hate him. She didn't forgive him. He was simply part of the story now, one that had left its mark. Her lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. Just the weight of acceptance settling in her bones. And she wondered, was freedom the act of leaving behind, or the courage to carry nothing at all?